All right. Um, I'm going to, as he said, talk about controlling Mummyberry organically. This was a project that was funded by the Washington Blueberry Commission. Um, Mummyberry is the single most destructive disease that we have in blueberries, particularly organic blueberries. However, if we don't get resistance in botrytis taken care of, that could be as big or more of a problem. So Washington has around 2,400 acres of organic blueberries. Uh, it's already it's above. Since I put this slide together, we're over 2,500. We have 2,500 acres in eastern Washington alone. Um, when these acres are fully producing, we could have as much as 43 million pounds. It could be worth 110 million when it's packed. So this shows you there's a lot of money in organic blueberries. Packed farm gate value can be $2.75, maybe $2.50 a pound. Hey, there's an organic blueberry grower right there and a black cat sitting down. What are you doing with all your money, Gary? Um, uh, but here's just interesting to put this in perspective. This number here is bigger than the number for the entire red raspberry industry in Washington. 85. Whoa! Don't hit that button. Okay. Um, that's right next to the light button here. But 85% of this is Eastern Washington and doesn't have Mummyberry in it. Washington blueberries. There's almost no organic blueberries in Western Washington. I estimate right now there's about 300 acres in Western Washington, and the only reason it's that high is we've had a grower plant a fair amount just in the last year or two, but about 300. But the yields for in Eastern Washington where they don't have Mummyberry is over between 20 and 25,000 pounds per acre. Now, primarily because they have some very ideal growing conditions, but also they don't have, it's an absence of disease. You're lucky to get 5,000 pounds an acre. What do you think? 5,000 pounds, is that a good number for organic blueberries in Western Washington? That's low? 10,000? I'll bet my bottom dollar there's not $10,000 pounds on an average organic blueberry field. Maybe in yours, which is what? Which 15. There's a guy that's making some money. But I have been in many blueberry fields that are 5,000 or less. And it's large part due to Mummyberry. Next year we'll let you give this talk. Arguably, I say there's no good organic control measures, certainly no documented chemical control measures that are NOP compliant. And Jay Scheid, Oregon State University, wrote this report that this bullet point is based on. When I get done, you can tell me what I should have been doing. There's some terrible losses in Western Washington to Mummyberry. Eastern Washington growers are concerned about it. They don't have it, but if they do have it, it could threaten the viability of their industry. And I've done 2 years of work on this. This is a place I did work in 2014. It is not an organic site, but they don't use fungicides on it. This is what Mummyberry looks like on a leaf strike, or that's a flower strike. This is a leaf strike. In 2014, we did some work with a number of products. These things aren't tilted so I can see them very well, but we did a Actinovate plus double nickel, Xenospore, Actinovate alone, untreated chet, Regalia, Actinovate plus Regalia, Serenade Optimum, double nickel, and Serenade soil. They're ranked on percent of 200 berries, so 36%. You see the untreated check. We had None of these products were significantly different. The fact that untreated checks in the middle doesn't mean that these are necessarily worse than these. There's no significant difference. Basically, what we found was nothing worked, and that's when making 6 applications of these products. In 2015, we did a trial. The first trial was in Whatcom County. This one was in Skagit County. It was in a conventional field, but it was a field that had been organic and went conventional. This is the first year that it went conventional. We had some pretty heavy pressure. We use water sensitive cards. So we know that we got good coverage. This is making an application. This is these are flower strikes. That's the Mummyberry growth on there. And this year we looked at a number of product. Again, we looked at, I cannot see that from here. That is number 8 was actinovate, going from the top down. Actinovate at 3 ounces, actinovate at 6 ounces, double nickel 2 quarts, regalia at 2 quarts, serenade at 20 ounces, actinovate plus double nickel, and actinovate at the high rate with the untreated check. And when you look at there's no difference here at the strikes on the leaves, May 6th. There was some difference. This is going to be interesting to explain. Our best treatment was the untreated check. Now, the reason for that was a little bit of an artifact in this field. It turns out that disease pressure was sometimes Mummyberry can be what's called patchy or clumped in its distribution. It's not uniform. And it just so happens, we didn't know this at the time when we set out the trial, but each one of these numbers is the average of 4 different locations. And 3 of the 4 locations for the untreated check happens to be in a weak area. And so it's not that the untreated check was the best treatment or the rest of these promoted. It just so happens that this untreated check was in an area where there's very low pressure. But the bottom line is we don't see, among these treatments, we don't see a lot of activity. However, actinovate at the high rate compared to everything else did have the least number of strikes on the flowers. If we look at fruit on the plant, and just so you know, infected fruit on the plant for Mummyberry is not always the best way to evaluate it, because when the fruit gets infected, it falls off more quickly than the other fruit. So you want to be careful about looking at infected fruit on the plant as a means for evaluating Mummyberry. But because you'll see that it's not a very good way of evaluating it. In this case, for what it's worth, Serenade Optimum had the least number of infected fruit on the plant, but maybe that's because more of it dropped off. The better way of looking at it is looking at fruit on the ground. In this case, the untreated check had the most. If you looked at what had the least, it was actinovate. So actinovate in this trial, although these were not statistically different, actinovate was the one that seemed to have some evidence of activity. We made 5 applications on this. One of the reasons why, so one of our conclusions is none of these products look to me like they're terribly effective. One thing that might mitigate this is we are working in cooperation with Tobin Peeber's group, and they sampled in this area, and they found that Mummyberry is releasing the ascospores earlier than what we realized. We made our first applications around March 13th. We found out afterwards that was after the apothecia were releasing ascospores, and we were even though we were 2 weeks earlier than when we did last year, we knew the season was advanced, but it was advanced more than we realized, and they were releasing ascospores in the first few days of March. So we were 7 to 10 days late with the first application. And one reason why some of these products might not be working is we're applying them at the same time as we normally would be applying the conventional fungicides. those products are a little heavier. They're a lot heavier duty, a lot more robust in their efficacy and activity. These products have to be on prior to the ascospores hitting the plant. So one explanation about why none of these products look good is simply they don't work. Another reason maybe we're not putting them on early enough. So if we do work on this in the future, one thing that we have to do is we have to put these on earlier. Now in 2016, we hope to keep doing some work and try and figure out how to use these products. We got a good place to do the work. We got a good cooperator. We're going to try putting them on earlier. But another thing that's quite interesting, there's a product called polyoxin D. It's known as PhD or OSO. We've used it in our raspberry trials. This is a product that is a conventional pesticide, but it turns out one of the formulations, the OSO formulation, is supposedly suited for organic certification. There's data available that shows it has activity against Mummyberry. It's a perfectly good botrytis product. The registrant is submitting it for OMRI review, which will take 3 years. They're confident that this is a product that's going to get organically certified. If this is the case, we may have something that's more of a normal conventional type product. And if it has activity against Mummyberry, this could really be a game changer. And the interesting thing is it's exempt from tolerance, which means it does not require MRLs. So the minute we got it registered, we could use it and ship it anywhere. So we're going to focus on trying, if we get funding, developing a polyoxin D use pattern and look at the timing, number of applications. We're going to test some additional products or some of the other products and just apply them earlier. So I'm going to take a quick break in here. Mr. Bohill, what should I have been doing? Hang on one second here. Introduce yourself.
So I'm Harley. I'm from Bohill Blueberries. We're certified organic. We use regalia. We mulch deeply and we use regalia, but we use anywhere from 6 to 8 applications. You were using 5. So we're starting really early and we're tank mixing with, rotating it with, so we always have regalia, then we are mixing with actinovate, double nickel, serenade. Each time we use something different. So we're using at the low rate of regalia and at the low rate of those other mixes.
So apply early and apply often.
Yeah. Yes.
Like voting in Chicago. Apply early and apply often.
Yes.
And
so
mulch.
We're doing every 7 days from the very beginning of green tip.
Yes. Just repass it back here.
Quite a few years ago, actinovate's been used extensively in trials in California. And one of the grape trials, one year, it completely failed. It was worse than the check. But come to find out, the container they had used was 3 years old and all the actinovate spores had died. So actinovate does have a shelf life. It is a living organism. And also you can't tank mix actinovate the night before because the organisms will drown. Yeah. And there have been, that's happened in the past as well.
Yeah, we always use fresh product, and we don't pre-mix, but that's very good information here. Tracy, it's not on. Okay, go ahead.
Is there a temperature requirement for those biological organisms to function? Like, is it too cold in early March for them to?
Well, the company would say that it's appropriate for them to use at that temperature. They're the ones telling us how to use that, and so they should be okay at those temperatures. All right, I'm going to move on and talk about something I'm a little more comfortable with. My PhD is in entomology, not plant pathology, although I got a minor in plant pathology. So I'm going to talk about spotted-winged Drosophila. We're going to skip over this. Well, skip over the first button, but Washington is actually the leading source of organic blueberries. most, and not just by a little bit, by most, the large majority of fresh blueberries packed in Washington are organic. And right now we've got a single product that growers are relying on for spotted wing Drosophila control in organic blueberries. That's Entrust. And the Entrust label, the new label, well, it's new, it's 1 year old now, requires growers to alternate. And it says alternate after 2 applications to another effective alternative. Growers would probably say we do not have an effective alternative. Mr. Middleton, what's an effective alternative to Entrust? None that he has found. So addressing this has been one of the top priorities for the Washington blueberry industry. You don't need to read this too much, but in here it says, do not make more than 2 consecutive applications of, this is Entrust. If additional treatments are required after 2 applications, rotate to another class of effective insecticides for at least 1 application. So if you don't rotate to something that's effective, it would be a label violation. And we don't have something. This really puts organic growers in a pickle. So they've got one problem they know that works. It's Entrust. And as a result, in my opinion, there's over-reliance on this. California organic berries have had SWD longer than we have. They've really poured on the Entrust, and they've got resistance. Oblique band and leaf roller in Washington apples, in organic apples, where they just use Entrust, has developed resistance, and it's going to happen here. It's going to happen here. Now, most organic blueberries in Washington are Dukes. They're early, and they've largely escaped spotted wing Drosophila. They may put a couple applications on, but I have an acre of Duke at our research site. We never spray our Dukes, and we've yet to find an SWD in our Dukes. But large acreages, it says are being planted, have been planted to Draper and later varieties, and they're much more at risk for SWD. The old Entrust label was written in such a way that will not protect these later varieties. The new Entrust label is written in such a way that won't protect anything season long unless we have something and be legal. And in the areas where we've been using Entrust for the longest period of time, Entrust is not giving the level of control it once was. So because we've had Duke at our place and we don't have spotted wing Drosophila in Duke, we were doing some work on blackberries. This is kind of this is somebody standing on in a bucket tractor up high as it can, shooting down on some triple crown blackberries at our location. And we have SWD from hell in blackberries. This is in August, and it is a mosh pit of SWD in here. We make applications, research applications. We were using an air blast sprayer, and we sprayed both sides. Now we've switched to an over-the-row sprayer. We can go through and make 5 applications, 5 different pesticide applications at a time. And so this is the kind of work that we've got. This is work we did in 2014. I can't see either of these very well. What you have is 17 different programs. In this case, the poorest program is at the bottom. Here's the untreated check. This is Pyganic. Pyganic alone, numerically, was worse than doing nothing. Statistically, it was the same as doing nothing. And that's what people have found all along. Pyganic simply does not have the residual activity to work. And we found, the azadirachtin products alone don't really work. But as you go up, this is Entrust. This is Entrust plus azadirachtin. The one thing we found was Entrust is a ticket, and if you put anything in with Entrust, it'll make anything look good. But if you start to go down, the first time you see something that doesn't have Entrust is, look at that, Jet Ag. Jet Ag is a package mix of hydrogen peroxide and peracetic acid. It's functionally similar to oxidate. This is something that has no insecticidal activity, But what we think is doing with Jet Ag is it surface sterilizes the berries. The females will come and sponge around and look for yeast and things. If they do not find something that they recognize as food, they will not lay eggs on it. And so that surface sterilizes the fruit, and it makes it seem like it is not suitable for oviposition. It's not a great product, but it is something that has activity. So what we learned in our first year was it was all about Entrust. Jet Ag did something, and there's a lot of other things that didn't work so well. But then we had this one product here, Grandivo. Grandivo had some activity. So in the following year, in 2014, and I know it's kind of hard to see, but the poorest performing here, in this case, are at the top. What's interesting, you have the untreated check here. What worked best? Entrust with bait. Entrust at, let's see, this is Entrust at 4 ounces worked better than Entrust at 6 ounces. So what we did was we put sugar in with Entrust, and it souped up Entrust. It was a feeding stimulant. It had sugar in there. They went and sponged around and fed it, and it was more toxic. The interesting thing also is you see right here, this line right here is Grandivo with bait at 1 pound. If you go up to Grandivo at 3 pounds is right here. Grandivo at 3 pounds was not as effective as Grandivo at 1 pound with bait. So we put sugar with Grandivo at the low rate, and it was as effective as Entrust. So one of the things that we learned was putting sugar, and this was corn syrup. We went to the local Quickie Mart and bought Cairo light corn syrup, which is fructose, and put it in with our product, and it made everything taste better. Now, so what we learned out of here is Grandivo has activity. Here's another product, Venerate. Venerate has activity. So here's what we learned. Grandivo has activity against spotted-winged Drosophila. Venerate has activity against spotted-winged Drosophila. Not as good as Entrust, but they both products have activity. And at least with Grandivo and Entrust, if you put sugar with them, it will be better. Now we put on 12.5%, which turns out if you're doing it on 50 acres is a daunting concept, 12.5% sugar. Since we've done this, some other people took our work and diluted it and found similar results at lower percentage. Don't ask me what it is, but it will work at less than 12%. And so we had a head of steam. We thought we were 8 feet tall and covered with hair, and we had this whole thing figured out. And we started cooperating with some other people around the country, and we're going to kind of synchronize our research. And so in 2015, we had this long list, and they said, you know, there's this great product called, it's called Cemexa. Cemexa is a silica that works, it's an organic product that works against bed bugs, and it's a silica gel. And so they said that's a ticket, and so we put it in a whole bunch of treatments, and it flopped everywhere. We added one more thing to our list of things we know that doesn't work. The problem is we really put a lot of weight on this one because some people said it really worked well on some other species, and it reduced the number of slots we had for some other products. You see these products down here that said experimental. These are not organic products. All right, they're not organic products. We had Mustang Max in here. We had this cyclanoprol, that's Exerol, but Entrust with corn syrup, again, worked as well as Mustang Max and Exerol. So we have another year's data that shows Entrust with corn syrup works. Another thing that worked was Entrust rotated with Venerate. So one of the things that we found, if you've got to rotate something with Entrust, use Grandivo or use Venerate. Now that was that was 3 weeks into the trial. If you took all of the sampling we did at the end of, by the end of the year and put it all together, the single best products that we had in here were the synthetic products, But here we go. Entrust with corn syrup was just as good as some of the other, as the Mustang Max, the things that's the hammer. Entrust with sugar. Also, if you've got the best thing that would be like a legal organic system to use would be Entrust rotated with, we had Veritran in here, but Veritran, it turns out it's organically certified, federally labeled, but it's not labeled in the state of Washington. It's Sabadilla, and it's not registered in the state of Washington. Usually if you see a Section 3 label, it's good to go. But it turns out for some reason, the company, MGK, never registered it with the state. Now, presumably, well, they just got bought by Valent, and I'm going to try and have Valent register it in the state of Washington. So Veritran, I never heard of it, but we're casting around for organic products. Sabadilla, it's organic, it's a plant extract. Hopefully we'll get it registered. I just want to point out, okay, good. This blue line is the untreated check. These are Entrust treatments. This is Entrust with sugar. It significantly improves it. And just so you know, we have an outrageous SWD population because we have a lot of untreated checks. We have a lot of untreated rows. We have products that don't work. And so we have a very heavy pressure situation. None of these things gave commercial level control, but if you just compare them, putting sugar in with Entrust significantly improved it. And it is organically acceptable to use sugar, whether it's organic or not. You can use GMO sugar and it's not an organic violation. That may be heresy, but it is not an NOP violation. Now, here's the other thing. If you want depressing, this is as depressing as we could not make the Mummyberry products work. These are all the organic treatments. This is Entrust with corn syrup. Overall, this is X-Roll and Mustang Max. In general, nothing works like a good, hard, synthetic, conventional insecticide. So we're going to try and take some of the ones here at the bottom next year and see if we can't make them work better. There you go. Okay, so one of our bottom lines from all the work that we did is we don't have anything that's as good as a replacement or as good as Entrust. If I had to pick a rotational partner, it'd be Grandiva or Venerate. Jet Ag has some value, and maybe what you might do is, I don't remember what the retreatment interval is between Entrust. Maybe it's like 7 days. Maybe you do Entrust, you do Jet Ag at 4 days, and then you do Entrust again at 8 or 9 days, and just spread it out a little bit and put Jet Ag in there, and you will still be compliant with the Entrust label. I definitely include sugar, and there's our research 2 years in a row has done it, and there's other people that's come out, they even published in Journal of Economic Entomology that shows that sugar works so well. And another thing, you've got to keep ahead of spotted wing Drosophila. If it gets established, there's nothing you can do organically to control it. You cannot let it get established. So like they said with Mummyberry, you have to start early, you have to have short intervals, high rates, you have to rotate products, and you have to have tank mixes. In 2016, we're going to, if we're funded, we're going to try and keep trying on this, try some different types of products, different rates, timings, start our applications earlier, and do more work on feeding stimulants. How are we doing for time? All right. Questions? Tony.
I know you said that Pyganic doesn't work. I did some work last year with Adam Cave at the USDA in Corvallis, and something I've been beaten on for quite a while is about the problem with pyrethrum. Several things. One is it breaks down in sunlight. photodegrades. It also is dependent on pH to lower the pH so you don't have a high pH that breaks down. But the biggest thing is it doesn't have a synergist in it. Pipienobi topside is
Right.
synthetic. It is not certified organic.
Used to be.
But it used to be. But the sesame seed oil is the same chemical structure as PBO. It's the same moiety, and I had him do a trial with Pyganic and sesame seed oil that was organic, and he improved the efficacy, the kill in the lab. I think they used spotted wing Drosophila, and it definitely improved the performance. So I'm just giving you as an idea. MGK didn't follow up on it. Nobody commercialized it. It never went past the lab trials, but it may be something of interest to improve the performance of pyrethrum as an alternate to that Entrust.
That may be the most interesting thing I've heard all day, besides Tobin Peever's talk. The catch to that is it's still going to photodegrade in UV.
Definitely. You're going to have to spray in the evening or the night. It's not perfect, but what's your alternative?
Daylight comes the next day.
Yeah.
And you need 7 days residual control, 5 days.
You're not going to get it. Yeah, you don't have residual, but you will get a
I'll tell
better,
you what,
a bigger knockdown
I will try.
kill with a synergist in it. That's the problem.
I will
with
try it.
pyrethrum.
I will, if we get funding, I will try that.
Okay.
I'll talk to you again and talk about rates. Okay. Another question, comment, something I'm doing wrong, should have done.
Hey, Alan, I just
Hey.
want to know how did you assess your effectiveness?
Okay.
Did you do the larva counts or did you do how did you do it?
Okay.
Yeah.
So we every 7 days we pull larvae and we do the salt dunk and count larvae. Hundreds and thousands of fruit. So we pull fruit out every 7 days and dunk them. Any questions? Jose, what do you got back there? Give this guy a microphone. Tell me what I should have been doing.
No, I think you're right. It's just except the Jet Act.
Yeah.
It's a pretty short PHI.
Oh, it has no. Well,
There's
no,
nothing.
No, it's short residual. Not. I mean, it has no PHI.
It has no PHI as long as it'll dry out.
Right.
It doesn't have any residual to kill in the future.
Okay. Exactly. It has no residual. When it dries, it's done. But what it's done is it has kind of dried out the yeast. And so the yeast has to, or whatever's on they're feeding on, has to recolonize. And that takes several days for that to happen. It has no toxic effect on spotted wing Drosophila that we know of. What it does is for several days, and I don't know what several is. Several, I'm going to say, is more than one at least. Makes that less suitable for the fly to come in and oviposit.
Yep, correct.
And so that's when I said when you use it, you want to come back fairly quickly with something else.
Yep. Entrust is 3 days PHI, so you can't really use it when you're harvesting. So probably that's making it a little tough to, unless you rotate.
Well, how often are you picking blueberries? Every 7
if
days?
you hand pick, probably 3 times.
Well, so you've got time to use Entrust between that. This gentleman, by the way, probably has used more Jet Ag on organic blueberries than anybody in the United States. So he knows more about it than I do. So you use it, right?
Yes, I've been using it.
And it does have some fit.
Oh, yeah, it helps a lot. And if you do it in the morning, early in the morning when everything's cool, that's when the flies flying, and probably it's a contact killer. So I don't have no data about it, but I think I feel it has.
You think it will kill? Well, all right, that would be news to me. What's your experience with Pyganic?
Which I don't want to say much about Pyganic. I think it's being kind
Okay. How about this? Do you use Pyganic?
Not so much.
Okay.
But if you tank mix it with,
well, tank mixing, we found in other we have yet to make it work for spotted wing Drosophila tank mixing with anything. We haven't. But there are other pests, aphids, and some other things. Tank mixing Pyganic with azadirachtin is a great product, but only tank mixed. Yeah, what do you got?
Hi, I work for Washington State Department of Ag Organic Program, and I just wanted to go back to the Mummyberries and the OSO product.
Yes.
And if Omri is going to take 3 years, you can get ahead of that if you are able to get the ingredient list from the manufacturer and get it to your certifier. Like if you go through WSDA, contact them with that list of ingredients, and they can let you know if you can use it, and you don't have to wait for something to be OMRI or WSDA
Really?
listed. Yes.
Okay, let's go over this
It's
again.
part of the
Okay.
regulation. So if you can show that all ingredients in a product are allowed under the NOP, it doesn't have to be WSDA or OMRI or EPA listed. Those are just conveniences for you, really.
Okay, something doesn't add up to me there. So you're saying if it's not OMRI approved, you can still use it
If you're certifying
I'm
agent
I'm a
approves
certified
it,
organic
yeah.
grower. I grow a lot of organic produce on my farm. I would not touch that with a 10-foot pole if it's not OMRI approved. If there's not an OMRI thing on there,
I mean, that's really reducing your options. So if you have a good communication with
What's
your
that?
certifying agent,
would you use a product that's conventional? Would you do what she would do? Well, first of all, are you a grower?
I'm a crop
What's that?
I'm a crop consultant
Okay.
and a manufacturer rep.
Okay.
And there definitely are products that are organic labeled that are not OMRI labeled. OMRI is just one type
Okay,
of
but this product is not organically approved.
well, then you can't use it.
well, do
But
you
she
know
is-
what all
but-
the ingredients are? Because
Okay.
you
But
know,
she's saying you can get a WS or another label quicker than you can get an OMRI
Okay,
label.
so
That's
they
what she's
submitted
saying.
this to Omri, and Omri turned it down, not because of the ingredients, but because they said the company didn't make a case that there was a need for it, which kind of strains my belief system. But they submitted, they're going to resubmit it. They said they've got what's in it is all things in it are organically acceptable, but it didn't make it for some other kinds of more bureaucratic reasons. Apparently, it was maybe not the best written package to be submitted. People that did it had never done it before. Um, but that's very interesting. I'm just going to tell you this.
yeah.
Don't use OSO organically right now, but I want to talk to you about that because another thing is this, we don't have data that shows that it works.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
But for any product that you want to use that's not OMRI or WSDA or EPA, check with your certifying agent before you use it. And if you can give them the ingredient
But I thought
list,
you couldn't use it unless it was on the WSDA approved list.
So the WSDA approved list and the OMRI approved list are lists that manufacturers voluntarily get their products registered with. But it costs money, and some manufacturers aren't going to go through that. But you can still use products as long as all ingredients are compatible with organic regulations. And with the NOP, with the USDA organic regulations, and the way you figure that out is to go through your certifying agency. So if you go through WSDA or Oregon Tilth or CCOF or QAI, they will tell you. They
you and I are going to
board.
talk afterwards about this. I'm
Okay, yeah.
I'm very, very interested in this.
I think if you guys could talk about that after this, I think we'll move on to the next presenter. Thank you,
Great.
Schreiber.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
So our next presenter will be Dr.